Greetings and welcome to the 58th episode of Morrowind Showcases. As always, I'm your host, Elf and today we have another 13 mods for your viewing pleasure, this time around with a sort of, magic and mage theme about them, including several really cool mods that should go a long way towards, helping out aspiring mages and wizard top characters. And as always, you'll find download links for all mods down in the video description below. So let's go ahead and get started with our popular mod of the week, which this week is Improved Ring of Teleportation by Tealpanda. And this is basically a major convenience mod that adds a new ring to the Balmora Council Club that you'll have to steal. And this is a pretty handy little ring to, have around. It can teleport you to practically every location in Morrowind. And not just Morrowind, but it also includes support for the Dranori built mainland, and many other popular mod locations as well. And the mod does come with two versions, one that requires nothing to use it, and a second version that costs magicka to use the ring. And that's the version I'm using here actually, so that's kind of our, mage theme connection really. And anyway, there's a lot of locations that you can teleport to with this ring, though some of them do have to be unlocked by completing vanilla quests first. And with this ring, you can teleport to every town, village, city, fort, shrine, and most of the merchants in the game, making it easy to unload your goods after a long day fighting through dungeons. And this is certainly a worthwhile mod to check out if you're looking for a convenience item that can also double as a mage-themed utility. For our house mod of the week this week, we have Dranori by TheDrunkenMudcrab, and this one adds a small wizard's tower in the Telvanni fashion to the Bitter Coast region, not all that far away from Cedar, terraforming one of the vanilla islands a bit with some magical roots and light sources. And you'll notice the tower here is actually from Resdayn Revival series, for those wondering why it looks, so familiar. Now, before you can claim this tower as your own, you'll need to do two things. The first of which is killing all the smugglers on the island, and the second is defeating the tower's previous owner, a mad Argonian wizard, which may prove to be slightly difficult for those under, I would say, maybe level 10 or so. And once you finish killing everyone, you'll find a pretty nice and of course magical tower for you to call home, complete with a display hall, which is, big enough to suit most of your needs, as well as a magical Daedra merchant. You can buy and sell various goods, including 2,000 bartering gold, as well as some unique dialogue, the ability to repair your arms and armor, and the option to restock an oblivion, in case he runs out of, Daedric weapons to sell you. And because this is a wizard's tower, you'll obviously find altars of enchanting and spellmaking, which allow you to enchant items or create new spells without actually relying on those NPCs at the Mages Guild, though it will still cost you a pretty septim. Also included here is fast travel to the various Mages Guilds around Svardenfell, and one of the key features here in the Wizard's Tower is a combined magical study and a library, complete with, a selection of brews for you to drink while you research spells or read a particularly interesting volume of literature. And there are some, rather unique design choices being used in here, as well as some documents left behind by the previous owner. And you'll also find a small ingredient garden where you can harvest some flowers, mushrooms, and, other various plants for your potions. And you also find a few pets in here as well. And finally, we have the master bedroom, a decidedly unique chamber that seems to be contained in a pocket of oblivion itself, with windows looking out into the void. And here you'll find your bed naturally, as well as some storage, bone piles, and various documents left by the previous owner. And there's even a bone hound that can act as your companion if you want. And overall, this is a great home for, those who are magically inclined. This week's gameplay mod of the week is Magic Path Tracing Thread by TundroWalker. And with this mod, you'll find a curious magical thread in the trade house in Cedar, and if you ask about it, you'll find out it used to be Fargos, but he's given it up for whatever reason. And regardless, one way or another, it's yours to take now. And you'll find that this magical thread allows you to trace your path, placing little magical breadcrumbs behind you so you don't, lose your way. And basically, with this magical thread enabled, you'll be able to leave a path of magical breadcrumbs behind you no matter where you go, either in town or out in the wilderness. This magical path is visible, showing where you've been already, and these nodes will only disappear if you walk over them. And a nice feature of the magical thread is that you can configure the distance between the nodes here, so it can be short, far, or somewhere in the middle. And you can also choose between two different types of nodes, so you can make two distinct types of paths if you want, which is, handy for organization and keeping track of things like, say you want to use one type of node to indicate a general sense of exploration, but another type of node to lead up to a dungeon where you've left some loot or, some such like that. And speaking of dungeons, these paths are quite convenient in dungeons as well, especially if you're exploring a large or dark set of dungeons. You can keep track of the way back out by utilizing these magical nodes, and this is just a fun sort of magical gameplay and convenience mod that, might help you out on your travels. And it should be noted that you can toggle off the magical paths that you've left behind if you so desire, or if you, find them to be a bit of an eyesore. Next up, we have our Dungeon Mod of the Week, which this week is The Mysterious Tower by Mad Wolf. And as you might imagine, this one adds, you guessed it, a mysterious tower to the Azura's Coast region, right outside the Mad Wizard's Tower at Telfry, which, of course, I'm probably mispronouncing, but anyway. Back to the showcase here. Where did it come from exactly? No one knows, but given the location, magic is almost certainly involved somehow, yet the only entrance is through a trapdoor at the base. And inside you'll find a very dark Imperial-style dungeon with a few corpses here and there, with notes talking about some sort of trap. And sure enough, you'll find that the only way out has been locked behind you, and you'll need to find the key somewhere in this dungeon before you can get out again. This shouldn't prove to be too much of a challenge, since this is a fairly low-level dungeon with mostly rats and the undead to contend with. And you'll find a lot of interesting stories and flavor documents left throughout this dungeon, providing a lot of cool things to read in here. I think there's about half a dozen or so new books, journals, and notes and the like, and you also find a lot of hidden passageways in here as well. Now, truth be told, this isn't strictly speaking a mage-themed dungeon, but it's a bit difficult to find dungeons of any theme, and you do practically have to cast Night Eye in order to see in here. There's your magic theme for you. And this isn't, really the first showcase that's been done for this mod either. Technically, one of the earlier Morrowind mod showcase channels from 2012, I believe, covered this mod. You'll find a link to that earlier showcase in the annotations here. And anyway, this dungeon isn't particularly large. It's a fairly modest size, but it will take about an hour or two to come through, and it is a bit maze-like in places, especially with the encroaching darkness. And, that magical thread mod that we just showcased would, really come in handy here in order to, keep from getting lost. And overall, this is a fun enough dungeon crawl that, it might be worth checking out, and regardless of whether you're a mage or not. For our items of the week this week, we have Particle Weapons Merchant Mod by Quirt. And basically what this mod does is it adds a new shop to the Temple Courtyard district of Mournhold, which you can see here, and this shop provides a number of unique, one-of-a-kind weapons for you to purchase. And going inside, you can find a wide array of weapons and also armors for sale from the merchant here, and like I said, these are some really unique-looking weapons too, and they will set you back by quite a lot. These range in price from a few thousand gold to a couple of 100,000 gold, so for the most part, these aren't weapons that you can buy right away, but regardless, they are certainly quite cool looking. They all come with particle effects of some kind, as you might expect from the mod name. So that means you'll see flame swords, shock staves, even lightsabers, interestingly enough, available for you to purchase here. And really, I gotta say, there's some really cool stuff in here. The author has clearly put in some creative thought into these particle effects used on these weapons here, to make them look, nice and flashy and also a bit unique. And you can really get a sense of what each weapon or piece of armor is supposed to do just by looking at it. You also have some very interesting looking shields in here. The bone shield in particular looks like something that Autoclock would make. But anyway, there's just a ton of neat stuff in here to check out. And with the expensive prices in here, everything is pretty balanced, I would say. And there's also some, very interesting equipment, like there's a sort of hoverboard thing that you can purchase, but, we want to skip over that. This week's question of the week is the Magus Unending by Davey and the Mad, and this is a quest mod that's really geared towards mages or wizards. In fact, if you're not a mage or a wizard, you're probably not even going to see this quest pop up in your game, even if you have the mod installed, since the quest automatically summons you once you reach a certain magical level of skill. And anyway, point is, once you've been summoned, you'll meet this character here, who requires your help to prevent some sort of dangerous magical threat from an outside realm from, destroying Nirn. He requires a powerful wizard to go and face this ultimate evil, and you really do want to be a high level for this. The author recommends about level 30 or so, and after playing this mod, that's probably on the lower end of the level requirements, truth be told. This is not an easy mod by any stretch of the imagination, And this quest actually involves, at least at first, going through and fighting through a set of dungeons as you try to get to this evil archer mage fellow. And these dungeons are fairly sizable and also fairly dark. You might want to bring a couple of torches or a spell of light with you. And you also face a lot of powerful and unique opponents in here, from animated suits of armor to various monstrosities and other more, standard fare undead creatures. And some of these can be quite annoying. Like you may stumble into a horde of bone walkers that can cast paralysis, and trust me, you're going to want to bring a ton of cure paralysis potions with you, just so that, you stand a chance against these guys. Now, like any dungeon, you'll find a fair amount of loot hidden in various nooks and crannies and oddball places here and there. And, I would say the loot balance here is actually a bit on the light side for how difficult this dungeon is. But anyway, you'll also encounter mini-bosses that you'll have to go through before you can face the ultimate evil overlord guy. And it should be mentioned that the final boss fight is actually one of the best boss fights I've seen in a Morrowind mod, but of course, we'll be skipping over it here due to, say it with me now, spoilers. So you'll have to experience that for yourself, but this is certainly a cool and challenging quest mod to check out, especially if you're playing a mage-like character. Next up, we have our Landmass Mod of the week, which this week is Twin Castles by Ravage. And this mod adds a portal to Sidanin that'll take you to a new magical winter realm of castles and forests. Though, truth be told, this is a bit of a, curious mod that uses a lot of interesting color choices for the texture work here especially. And to say the least, this is a rather unique mod, and the castle here is quite massive, with tons of towers, walls, and outbuildings surrounding the courtyard here. Now, the first, most obvious thing we need to address here is the texture work, which is, yes, a bit off-putting. The castle grounds and, the walls and towers here largely use a blue-colored texture, with the bridges using a sort of purplish color outline that is perhaps a bit outdated by today's standards. But if you can, look past that, you'll find a rather, beautiful and charming winter castle here, with large and wide forests surrounding the castle property, just on the other side of these large walls here. And there's a fairly nice landscape design here, with a moat going around the castle, and lots of kind of cool looking features. Like, for example, ice wolves, wolf statues, birds flying around above, animated flags flying high in the wind, and even a few particle effects here and there. This castle, despite some, perhaps dated texture work, can be, quite scenic. And you'll perhaps be unsurprised to learn that, yes, this is technically speaking a house mod, and a rather large one at that, and we're only going to be doing a quick showcase here, but there are hundreds of interiors in this castle, so much so that it is painfully easy to get lost in here. But more on that in a moment. Moving on to the interior here. The inside of the castle has a very noticeable blue and white theme going on, with a large entry hall with, glass chandeliers coming down from the ceiling, as well as fountains and gardens. This is really, a sort of lavish castle to live in, to be sure. And there's a ton of curious rooms in here, many of which are ideal for mage-type characters or wizards, or, something of that like, such as a planetarium with displays of the planets, as well as a lot of bookshelves, and, a bit of a fun fact here. Nearly everything in this castle is a container, and I do mean everything. You can use the bookcases to store items, the counters, the rugs. Yes, I did just say the rugs. You can actually put stuff in the rugs. This certainly gives you a lot of storage options, though perhaps at the cost of being a bit on the, sort of odd side. And anyway, quite naturally, there's also a library, and, the entire castle is quite bright in terms of interior lighting. I suspect some of that is, due to the texture work in here. And you also find a bit of a magical laboratory, where you'll find access to a lot of, different magical themed rooms. And there's some interesting werewolf statues in here, and some other interesting devices. This, of course, includes some labeled ingredient storage, as you can see here, which also includes support for a lot of modded ingredients as well. And as you might expect, you'll also find display halls pretty much all over the place, with armored display mannequins and display podiums for you to, throw your loot on. And something I have to comment on here, you'll also find a lot of rather interesting doors in this mod that are a bit more elaborate than I would say is, typically normal. And, just in terms of the animations and design, And one of the other features here includes a large teleport chamber with access to every town, city, and region in the game by way of these teleport crystals, which are, certainly quite interesting looking. It should be mentioned that Twin Castles is nearly a gigabyte in terms of total download size, probably due to all the model resources being used here. And I did just want to take a quick look at some of the larger rooms available in this castle. And here you can see the Grand Ballroom, where you can host parties or have, well, a ball with lots of dancing and music and the like. There's far too many rooms to possibly cover them all in this showcase, but I do want to, show off some of these larger ones just to give you a sense of scale here. And this also includes a large dining room, as you might imagine, and this is only one of several dining rooms that you'll find throughout this house. And I believe there's about 3 or 4 different dining rooms, many of which already come with some NPC staff, and they're all, pretty nicely decorated as well. You'll also find a number of shops around the castle complex, and these include hundreds of new and unique items for sale, from clothing to random miscellaneous decorations, to drinks, food, and a lot more. There's just an absurd amount of new stuff in here. The author clearly, really likes using model resources, that's definitely for sure. And anyway, going back to the castle here, you'll find a number of large display hall vaults down in the basement and lower levels of this massive abode, including some, truly quite curious doors. I don't think I've ever seen, anything quite like this in any other mods before. And there's also a lot of personal rooms all over the castle for you to use, including some rather interesting and scenic ones with lots of decorations, where you can study, relax by the fire, or, house some extra NPC staff if you so desire. And you also find some smaller, display rooms here and there with some more traditional display cases that can be opened to place items inside of. And you'll note that it is quite easy to get lost inside this castle, but thankfully it does come with a teleport system for, getting around to some of the bigger rooms. And you will almost certainly have to, use this system to get around, given how big this castle is. But anyway, there is one last thing to show off here. As the name of this mod would imply, there's actually 2 castles. The bright and magical castle we saw before, but also a sort of, demented and horror-themed castle that you can see here. And we're going to be skipping over the rest of this castle because the showcase has already gone on a bit too long. But this is definitely an interesting mod to check out. This week's NPC mod of the week is Elemental Magic by Lady Ray. And this is a new race mod that adds a race called Elementals to the game. And these are a magically inclined race with lots of skill bonuses for pretty much every major school of magic. Plus they have some pretty cool, special powers. The race itself is rather diverse, featuring a few very different types of heads, from Khajiits to Red Guards, and all these have, largely bluish hair, which is certainly quite different from, other races you see around Morrowind in the vanilla game. And you can see one of the male elemental race characters here, and, well, to say the least, they are very different. Most notable is their skin, which is quite colourful and, exhibits sort of an elemental characteristic, like flames or water, which is, probably why they're called elementals in the first place. And something else to note here is their flaming wings that hover around them, and these are essentially butterfly wings, I believe, but with the appearance of flames, which is, certainly quite interesting looking. They also appear to have, cat ears and some rather striking eyes, I must say. Now, it must be mentioned that this isn't just a new race mod, it also adds a new sort of, magical realm that you can visit. A sort of relaxing island where elementals can take a break between adventures, and this is also where you'll find a couple of elemental NPC merchants who sell unique elemental armor and weapons for you to purchase. Plus they have a ton of bartering gold, which may just slightly be a bit cheaty, but details. You can see my character wearing some of these outfits here, and they're fairly, well, simple and largely transparent. At least most of the outfits have some degree of transparency from what I've seen anyway. There's clothing for both males and females naturally, and these outfits give you a bit more, variety for what to wear with your new characters. And finally, we're going to take a look at just one more elemental, this time a female elemental. And you can see again that they are just really colourful looking. And fair warning, this mod only comes with one version, and that's a nudity version, so just in case that's something that you want to avoid, just keep that in mind. And either way, they are a sort of perfect race for those who are magically inclined, and certainly worth checking out. Now, this week's new meshes and textures mod of the week is AOF Potions by an old friend, and this is a fairly simple and straightforward replacer of the potions that you find in Morrowind, replacing the cheap, bargain, standard, quality, and exclusive potions with new models and textures that are, decidedly quite different from the original potions, I must say. And we're actually going to take a look at some of these potions here in a couple of the alchemy shops in the base game, and they're quite a bit smaller than the original potions were, with size more or less directly relating to their quality. So that means that bargain and cheap potions are smaller than quality and exclusive potions, which is basically the opposite of vanilla Morrowind, where the quality of potion was typically, smaller. And anyway, taking a closer look at these models here, these are some really nice and high quality sort of crystal-like potions, with the cheaper potions having simple wooden corks, and the more expensive potions having elegant silver tops that you presumably pour out to drink from them. And all the potions are notably smaller than vanilla Morrowind potions, perhaps to reflect the practical nature of lugging around a bunch of bottles to, quickly drink in between fighting and adventuring. Either way, they're certainly quite nice looking and a really great replacement for Morrowind's alchemical potions. Next up, we have our modest resource mod of the week, which this week is Magic Gate's VFX Resource Pack by Orpha. And this is a rather small resource really, containing about half a dozen different types of magical gates for you to use in your own mods. Pretty much all of them also have some, interesting particle effects, and there's a nice variety here, from Oblivion-style gates to some gates that, kind of remind me of the magical portals in some of the older role-playing games out there. And this is a really nice set of resources to use in your own mods. They obviously make for some great magical portals to other realms, houses, or summoning chambers. So there's a few different ways that you could, potentially use them. And I'm pretty sure that we've actually showcased a few mods in the past that have used some of these portals, so I can't remember which ones at the moment. But regardless, this is a pretty neat, if also a bit dated resource that comes with a .esp where the gates are, already set up for you. So you can, just drag and drop them into your own mods, which is pretty convenient. For our underrated mod of the week this week, we have Guild Guide Quest by Beerlock, and I do apologise if I mispronounced the name there. And anyway, this mod adds about 5 new quests given by the various guild guides that you can find in each branch of the Mage's Guild. Those NPCs that provide fast travel service in between Mage's Guild locations. And these quests are pretty simple to do. Most of them involve gathering information, and you'll need to be a pretty high-ranking member of the Mage's Guild in order to do them. The goal of these quests is to eventually be able to fast travel to the various guild branches on your own, through casting spells rather than, relying on traditional means of travel. But you'll need to complete each quest first, and then pay an additional 150 gold fine to each of the guild guides in order to access this spell. And once you've completed everything though, you can cast this spell just like any other, and then pick your destination. It does use up a lot of magicka, so you're going to, need to be a pretty high level in order to use it, more than once in a row. But it's certainly a very convenient and, handy spell to have for getting around the guilds without paying for transportation and all that. This week's Blast in the Past mod of the week is Telperion by Callous Lane, and I do apologise if I mispronounced that name there. And anyway, this is an old classic and probably one of the best treehouse mods available for Morrowind. Telperion is a massive treehouse home in the Ascadian Isles region, with a bit of a magical theme, as we'll see in a moment. And in any event, this is a really beautiful, massive tree with stairs going around the trunk here, and multiple little balconies and viewing platforms that you can use to enjoy some truly scenic views of the Ascadian Isles from, with a nice bit of atmospheric lighting along the exterior, which also looks pretty good at night time, I gotta say. And as you might expect from a giant treehouse like this, there's a large balcony and overlook at the top, which comes complete with outdoor dining, providing you with some, really one-of-a-kind views of, the Ascadian Isles region and the nearby city of Vivek. And this is truly a very scenic and relaxing place to take a break after a long day adventuring. But before you move in, there is a small quest that you need to do to gain entry, which, involves freeing this poor fairy from a magical force field. And this will eventually take you to Solstein, but we're going to skip over the quest here and just go straight inside. This entire tree is completely hollowed out to provide you with an absolutely beautiful and well-finished home to call your own, with a dining room, kitchen and lounge that you can find on the first floor here, and you'll notice a few display cases here and there throughout your new treehouse home. and the entire place is rather cozy, but the kitchen is especially nice and warm. And it should be mentioned that Telperion does come with norm support, so if you have necessities of Morrowind, you'll find all of your basic necessities provided for in your new tree home. And up on the second floor, you'll find a combined display hall and alchemical lab, complete with several bookshelves for you to display items on, chests for storing the rest, and a set of alchemical equipment labeled ingredient jars, and our fairy friend who can provide ingredient sorting on the fly. And on the top floor, you have the master bedroom naturally, with convenient access both to the roof and an upper level outdoor balcony, so you can greet each day to some amazing views. And there's also a small bathroom with a tub and a private lounge up here as well. And downstairs in the basement, you'll find an additional display hall, complete with several tables and some on display mannequins for you to use, and this is just a really nice home to move into. Finally, for our bonus mod of the week this week, we have improved propylene particles by Star Wars Gal 9875, and this is a pretty simple and straightforward mod that just, replaces the particle effects for the teleportation chambers that you can find in, various dumb strongholds. And to my mind, this replacer is pretty fantastic. I don't know if you guys remember the older vanilla particle effects, but it was, rather limited, and also kind of laggy, at least, back when Morrowind first launched anyway. And these new particle effects seem to have a much, larger area effect, encompassing pretty much the whole room with these star-like particles that lend a magical air to these teleportation chambers. And again, it's a straightforward replacer, but a lot of fun to play with, and I definitely recommend it. And anyway, that wraps up everything for this episode of Morrowind Showcases. Stay tuned next week for episode 59 with another batch of 13 mods for your viewing pleasure. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.